Sarah and Lily Harrison walked into Target like any other mother and daughter, but behind their smiles hid a secret that would soon shatter their quiet lives and turn a simple shopping trip into a crime that shocked their entire town. At first glance, the Harrisons seemed like an ordinary family, the kind people passed by in the grocery store without a second thought. Sarah Harrison was a 32-year-old single mother who lived in a small apartment on the edge of town with her 10-year-old daughter, Lily. The walls were thin, the furniture secondhand, and the bills always seemed to outweigh the paychecks. But despite the struggles, Sarah tried to keep things normal. She woke up early every morning to pack Lily's lunch, braided her hair before school, and smiled at the neighbors as if everything was fine. Sarah worked part-time at a diner off Main Street, a place that smelled of coffee and fried food. Her shifts were long, and her feet ached by the end of each night. The tips weren't great, and sometimes she had to choose between paying the electric bill or buying enough groceries for the week. The people around her didn't know the full picture. To them, she was just another hard-working mom doing her best. No one saw the stack of unopened envelopes on the kitchen counter or the quiet panic that filled her chest each time the phone rang with another late payment notice. Lily was a bright and curious child. She loved drawing and reading, her small world filled with colors and imagination. She never complained when things were tough. She wore hand-me-down clothes from the thrift store and learned early not to ask for things her mother couldn't afford. Still, like most kids her age, she dreamed of birthday parties, new shoes, and shiny toys she saw in the store windows. Sarah's love for Lily was fierce. She would have done anything for her daughter, but that love, mixed with exhaustion and worrying, started to twist into something dangerous. She told herself she wasn't doing anything wrong, not really, that she was just trying to keep her little family afloat. It began with small compromises, taking home extra napkins and condiments from work, pocketing a few unused supplies meant for the diner. Each time, it felt harmless, justified even. Then one afternoon, after another long shift and a walk through the rain with groceries she could barely afford, Sarah sat on her worn-out couch and stared at the empty wallet in her hand. The weight of everything, rent, food, school supplies, pressed down on her until something inside her snapped. She wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of working so hard and still coming up short. Tired of watching her daughter pretend not to want things other kids had. The following weekend, Sarah decided to take Lily to Target. It was supposed to be a normal trip, a small escape from their troubles. They wandered the aisles, looking at toys and clothes they couldn't buy. But for Sarah, that day would mark the start of something she could never undo. She didn't know it yet, but that quiet moment of desperation, standing under the bright red logo of a store filled with things she couldn't afford, would soon become the turning point of their lives. The morning air was cool when Sarah and Lily stepped out of their apartment. Sarah told herself they were just going shopping, nothing more. She had $20 tucked into her pocket and a growing list of things she couldn't afford. The Target store stood tall and inviting, with its bright red circles gleaming under the sunlight. For Sarah, it was a place that represented everything she wanted to give her daughter but couldn't: comfort, beauty, and the feeling of having enough. They walked through the sliding glass doors and a wave of air conditioning brushed over them. Lily skipped ahead, excited by the colors and sounds of the store. She loved the toy section most of all, where shelves were filled with dolls, puzzles, and boxes that promised fun and happiness. Sarah smiled as she watched her daughter explore, but beneath that smile was something darker, a quiet sense of defeat. In the past, Sarah had always played by the rules. But now the rules didn't seem fair anymore. She was working as hard as she could and still barely surviving. She looked at the neatly arranged rows of products and thought about how much money these stores made every day. They wouldn't even notice if something small went missing, she told herself. That thought lingered in her mind longer than it should have. As Lily wandered through the aisles, Sarah's eyes caught a small box of makeup on a display table, something she used to buy when life felt normal. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, feeling the familiar thrill of something forbidden. She looked around, her heart pounding, then slipped it quietly into her purse. The sound of her heartbeat drowned out the soft music playing over the speakers. When nothing happened, when no one called out to stop her, she felt a rush of relief she hadn't expected. That one act lit a spark she couldn't put out. On the way home, Sarah told herself it was only makeup, something small, something harmless. But the next time they went to the store, she found her hand reaching again. A few snacks one week, a pack of batteries the next. Each time she took something, the fear grew smaller and the temptation grew stronger. Lily noticed her mother's odd behavior but didn't understand it. Sometimes Sarah would ask her to stand close, to hold a jacket or toy while she checked something. Lily didn't see what her mother was doing, not at first. But slowly, Sarah began to involve her, asking her to carry small items, to slip something into her pocket just for fun. Sarah framed it as a game, a secret they shared. Lily thought her mother was teaching her to be brave, to do something exciting. She didn't realize it was wrong. Her small hands followed her mother's instructions, her trusting heart unaware of the danger building around them. Each visit became easier, smoother, more planned. Sarah started to memorize the store's layout, where the cameras were, which employees paid attention, which aisles were quiet. What began as a desperate act had turned into something else entirely, a routine built on risk and guilt. But behind every calm step, there was the uneasy feeling that someone was watching. A camera's faint click, a shadow moving near the exit. Sarah tried to ignore it, convincing herself she was invisible. She didn't know that Target's loss prevention team had already begun to take notice that her small crimes were no longer going unseen. Over the next few months, Sarah and Lily's trips to Target became more frequent. What once felt like a simple errand slowly turned into a secret routine that both mother and daughter understood without needing to say a word. Sarah no longer entered the store with hesitation. Instead, she walked with quiet confidence, her purse held close and her eyes scanning every corner. The fear that once made her hands tremble had faded, replaced by a calm that came from practice. Lily followed closely beside her, carrying the same small backpack she always brought. She thought of these trips as adventures, something special she and her mother shared that no one else knew about. Sarah had made it sound like a challenge, a clever trick they were both good at. She called it being smart, and Lily, still too young to understand right from wrong in that moment, believed her. They had a system. Sarah would walk through certain aisles, acting casual as she slipped small items into her bag. Lily would keep watch, pretending to browse. They learned the patterns of the store, which times were quiet, which employees were too busy to notice. Sarah convinced herself that she wasn't hurting anyone. After all, they only took things they needed. But as weeks passed, what counted as need kept growing. Toys, clothes, even electronics began to disappear into her purse and Lily's backpack. Meanwhile, whispers began to spread among the store's staff. A few cashiers mentioned how the same mother and daughter seemed to visit often without ever buying much. One of the floor managers started checking the inventory reports more carefully. At first, nothing concrete stood out, just small losses here and there. But the numbers added up slowly and the pattern became clearer with every passing week. Target's loss prevention team decided to investigate. They reviewed surveillance footage going back several weeks. There they were, Sarah and Lily, walking calmly through the aisles, stopping in the same sections, leaving with the same bags that never went through a checkout line. The realization stunned them. It wasn't just the theft that caught their attention, but the fact that the child was clearly involved. From that point on, every visit Sarah made was being watched. Security officers in plain clothes began to follow her movements discreetly. Cameras zoomed in closer. Every item she took was recorded, every moment carefully documented. But Sarah, unaware of how closely she was being monitored, continued as usual. Her actions had become second nature, automatic, as if this way of living was now normal. At home, she hid the stolen items neatly in drawers or gave them to Lily as small gifts. Lily accepted them happily, proud that her mother trusted her to help. She didn't see fear in her mother's eyes anymore, only a strange kind of confidence that made her feel safe. But beneath that calm surface, something else was forming, something Sarah couldn't control. The more she stole, the more she convinced herself it was harmless. Yet deep down, she knew she was crossing a line she could never return from. Every camera she passed, every glance from an employee became a silent warning she refused to hear. What she didn't realize was that the walls were slowly closing in. The list of missing items was growing longer. The evidence against her was piling up, one quiet visit at a time. And soon, the routine she thought was invisible would turn into the very thing that exposed her. It was a gray afternoon when everything began to unravel. Rain poured steadily over the parking lot, turning puddles into mirrors that reflected the red glow of the Target sign. Sarah parked her old car near the back of the lot, the windshield wipers squeaking in tired rhythm. She sat for a moment, watching people hurry in and out of the store. The world seemed ordinary, but a quiet unease tugged at her stomach. She ignored it, telling herself it was just another shopping trip. Lily sat in the back seat, humming softly, unaware that this visit would be unlike any before. Inside, the store was bright and calm, the faint scent of popcorn from the cafe drifting through the air. Sarah grabbed a red shopping cart, though she didn't plan to use it for paying customers' reasons. She moved with the same routine precision as always. She knew where to go, which aisles to avoid, and how to time everything perfectly. But what she didn't know was that plainclothes security officers were already watching her from the moment she walked in. The store's loss prevention team had been preparing for this day. For weeks, they had gathered footage and documented every visit. They knew her patterns, how she always came in late afternoon, how she lingered in the accessories section, how she used Lily as a distraction. Today, they were ready to act. Sarah led Lily toward the jewelry aisle. The overhead lights glinted off rows of bracelets and necklaces, and she reached for one with trembling fingers. Her pulse quickened, but she reminded herself that she had done this many times before. Lily wandered to the next aisle, holding a box of markers. Sarah glanced around, her eyes darting to check for cameras, then slipped the necklace into her purse. It took only a second, but that second was all it took to seal her fate. Across the store, the security officers exchanged a quiet signal. One moved closer, pretending to browse. The other watched from the end of the aisle, phone in hand, ready to alert the police if needed. Sarah continued as if nothing was wrong, even asking Lily if she was ready to leave. Together they walked toward the exit, the automatic doors sliding open as the rain fell harder outside. For a brief moment, it seemed like they would make it through again. The alarm didn't sound, the cashiers didn't call out. But before Sarah could step off the mat, two officers approached from either side. Their badges flashed, their expressions calm but firm. Sarah froze, her hand tightening on Lily's shoulder. The world around her seemed to stop moving. They asked her to step aside. Shoppers slowed down to stare, whispering as the scene unfolded. Sarah's purse was open right there by the door. Inside were the necklace, a small makeup kit, and a few toys. Lily's face went pale as she realized what was happening. The officers gently led them to the back of the store, where a small room waited behind a closed door. The reality of what she had done hit Sarah all at once. The relief she used to feel after every theft was gone, replaced by cold panic. She tried to explain that it was all a mistake, that she hadn't meant any harm, but the evidence spoke louder than her words. The store manager and police officers took notes as they read out the list of stolen items from previous visits. When Sarah was finally handcuffed, she didn't look up. She only glanced at her daughter sitting quietly in the corner, her small hands clenched together, eyes wide with confusion and fear. The officers led Sarah through the rain toward the waiting police car, the flashing lights reflecting off wet pavement. Inside the store, Lily remained with an employee who tried to comfort her. The child said nothing. She just kept staring at the doors where her mother had disappeared, unable to understand how their secret game had turned into this. The weeks that followed were heavy with silence. After Sarah's arrest, Lily went to live with her aunt, a woman who barely spoke but made sure the child was safe and fed. The house felt unfamiliar, too quiet, filled with the faint smell of laundry detergent and the hum of the refrigerator. Every night, Lily lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about her mother. She replayed that final day in her mind again and again, trying to understand what went wrong. For the first time, she realized the game they had played was never a game at all. Sarah spent her first nights in county jail in disbelief. The cell was small and cold, and the reality of what she had done grew heavier each day. She wasn't a violent criminal, not someone who set out to hurt anyone, yet here she was, wearing an orange jumpsuit, surrounded by women who had their own stories of mistakes and desperation. She thought constantly about Lily. The image of her daughter crying at the store's entrance haunted her. Every choice she had made replayed in her head like a film she couldn't pause. Court days were the hardest. Sitting before the judge, Sarah listened as her lawyer spoke about her financial struggles and her role as a single mother. The store's representatives presented the evidence, detailed and precise, security footage, receipts, and an itemized list of every product she had taken over the months. The total value of the stolen goods surprised even Sarah. It wasn't just a few small things. It was enough to make her realize how far she had gone. When the judge sentenced her to 6 months in jail and community service after release, she didn't cry. She just nodded, knowing she deserved it. While Sarah served her time, Lily tried to adjust to a new routine. Her aunt enrolled her in a nearby school, and slowly she began to talk to new classmates. But she kept her family story a secret, too afraid of what people might say. When letters from her mother arrived, written neatly on lined paper, she read them over and over. Sarah's words were filled with regret and love. She wrote about learning from mistakes, about facing consequences, and about wanting to build a better life when she came home. Each letter ended with the same promise that things would be different. When Sarah was finally released, her body felt lighter, but her heart carried the same weight. She moved into a small apartment not far from her sister's house and started volunteering at a local youth program. Speaking to other parents about her experience helped her heal in small steps. She told them how easily desperation could blur right and wrong, how a single decision could change a family's life. Some listened with empathy, others with disbelief, but every time she spoke, she felt a little closer to forgiveness. Lily visited her mother every weekend. The two of them would sit in the park, feeding ducks or sharing ice cream. The bond between them was fragile but real. Lily had grown quieter, older in a way children shouldn't have too, yet she still smiled when her mother laughed. Over time, they began to rebuild what they had lost, not with gifts or secrets, but with honesty. Sarah never returned to the Target store again. The sight of its red logo from a distance was enough to remind her of everything she had risked. She had once thought she was teaching her daughter how to survive, but in the end she had taught her something far more important, that every choice leaves a mark and some lessons are learned the hardest way possible.